was in those ships of three on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day? And what was in those ships of three on Christmas Day in the morning? The Virgin Mary and Christ were there on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. The Virgin Mary and Christ were there on Christmas Day in the morning. Then let us all rejoice amain on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. And let us all rejoice amain on Christmas Day in the morning.
Greetings, brothers and sisters, and thank you for coming to help us celebrate the birth of our Lord. Joy of the coming feast to all of you. As you remember, when our Lord walked the earth, He told us to be as children, to be simple, to be truthful, to be joyful, and to delight in the beauty of our Father's world. And it is in the spirit of that joy that we gather here tonight. We are here to be as children. We are here to sing carols and tell stories that will bring us into the joy and wonder that is Christmas. And we invite and entreat you all to sing with us, with your hearts, with your programs, that you share them so that we can all sing together as we prepare our hearts for our Lord's glorious birth. The first Noel, the angels did say, was to certain poor shepherds in fields where they lay, in fields where they lay keeping their sheep on a cold winter's night that was so deep. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel. They looked and up and saw a star shining in the east, beyond them far, and to the earth it gave great light, and so it continued both day and night. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel. You should all know that there will be certain times where we will not be singing all the verses. Just try to follow us along. Because in that night of that first Noel, we are running with the shepherds. We are singing with the angels. We are spreading the tidings far and wide that Jesus Christ is born. And we invite all of our neighbors to gaze upon a little child. Bring a torch and that is a bell, bring that torch to the stable and run. Jesus wakes, good folk of the village, Christ is born, and Mary's calling, hark, hark, beautiful is the mother, hark, hark, beautiful is the child. Come adore the infant Jesus, whisper, Lord, to gaze with delight. Angel voices singing His praises while the song rings clear and brightly. Hush, hush, peacefully now He slumbers. Hush, hush, peacefully now He sleeps. Let us gaze upon the little child, and as we gaze, let us remember this tiny baby set before us is the Lord of hosts, the God of all creation. It is so often the littlest things that are the most important. So now we'll hear a little poem about a little tree a little thing we wait for all year long that brings us so much joy.
Little tree, little silent Christmas tree. You are so little, you are more like a flower. Who found you in the green wood? And were you very sorry to come away? See, I will comfort you, because you smell so sweetly. I will kiss your cool bark and hug you safe and tight, just as your mother would. Only don't be afraid. Look, the spangles that sleep all year in a dark box, dreaming of being taken out and allowed to shine. The balls, the chains, red and gold, the fluffy threads. Put up your little arms, and I'll give them all to you to hold. Every finger shall have its ring, and there won't be a single place darts or uncut.
Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies. With angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Christ by heart is and adore, Christ the everlasting Lord. Late in time, behold him come, offspring of the Virgin's womb. Veiled in flesh, the Godhead see, hail the incarnate deity. Pleased as man with man to dwell, Jesus our Emmanuel. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. There are many joys of the Christmas season, as we know, but of them all, perhaps the most wonderful is getting your friends together and setting out to carol for your neighbors. If you haven't done this, I strongly suggest you try it, because there is no joy quite like singing your heart out in the crisp, cold air and then returning to the warmth of a fireside with your friends.
It was a pretty sight, and a seasonable one, that met their eyes when they flung the door open. In the forecourt, lit by the dim rays of a horn lantern, some 8 or 10 little field mice stood in a semicircle, red worsted comforters round their throats, their forepaws thrust deep into their pockets, their feet jiggling for warmth. With bright, beady eyes, they glanced shyly at each other, snickering a little, sniffing and applying coat sleeves a good deal. As the door opened, one of the elder ones that carried the lantern was just saying, "Now then, 1, 2, 3. And forthwith their shrill little voices uprose in the air, singing one of the old-time carols that their forefathers composed in the fields that were fallow and held by frost, or when snowbound in chimney corners and handed down to be sung in the miry street to lamplit windows. Villagers all, this frosty tide, let your doors swing open wide. Though wind may follow and snow beside, yet draw us in by your fire to bide. Joy shall be yours in the morning. Here we stand in the cold and the sleet, blowing fingers and stamping feet, come from far away, you to greet. You by the fire and we in the street, but bidding you joy in the morning. For ere 1/2 of the night was gone, sudden a star has led us on, raining bliss and benison. Bliss tomorrow and more anon. Joy for every morning. Good man Joseph toiled through the snow, saw the star o'er a stable low. Mary, she might not further go, welcome thatch and litter below. Joy was hers in the morning. And then they heard the angels tell who were the first to cry Noel. Animals all, as it befell, in the stable where they did dwell. Joy shall be theirs in the morning. The voices ceased. The singers, bashful but smiling, exchanged sidelong glances, and silence succeeded, but for a moment only. Then from up above and far away, down the tunnel that they had so lately traveled, was borne to their ears in a faint musical hum, the sound of distant bells ringing a joyful and clangorous peal. "Very well sung, boys," cried the rat heartily. "And now come along in, all of you, and warm yourselves by the fire, and have something hot."
God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born on Christmas Day, to save us all from Satan's power when we were gone astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. In Bethlehem in Jewry, this blessed babe was born, and laid within a manger upon this blessed morn. The witch's mother Mary did nothing take in scorn. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. From God our heavenly Father a blessed angel came, and unto certain shepherds brought tidings of the same, that in Bethlehem was born the Son of God by name. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. Now to the Lord sing praises, all you within this place, and with true love and brotherhood each other now embrace. This holy tide of Christmas all other doth deface. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy.
Jesus Christ was born for everybody. Isn't that true? He was born for everybody, right?
Yes.
And so, because he was born for everybody, almost everybody in the world, whether in Europe or in South America or in America, they have their own songs and carols to celebrate his birth. Some of these carols are deep and solemn, some of them are joyful and high, some of them are just fun. So, in the spirit of Christmas fun, this next song is a French song. And it's about a man named Guillery. Guillery means Willie. It's about a man named Guillery who wants to have a feast, which in French is une fête, une fête. And he wants to have this fête, this feast, for le Noël. Noël is Christmas. And so for this fête de Noël, Guillery goes to the market to buy a rôti, a roast, and on the way back from the market, he meets some amis, he meets some friends of his. And they invite him to take a couple pots of ale. And he has so much fun with his ale that he just forgets about his roast. And the moral of the story is, if you're gonna have a feast, pick a good time before you have fun. So, in this story, in this Christmas song that comes from France, there are some nonsense words that come at the end. And they're fun to say, if you guys can say them. And it goes, the very end goes, te lairas-tu, mourir. I want you guys to try that, okay? It goes, te lairas-tu, this is in broad American, God help us. It's te lairas-tu, mourir. God forgive us. Okay? And then the part that comes right before that is, you'll hear an carabi, ti carabi, toto carabo, o camper Guillery. And that part means, camper Guillery means our little friend Willie. And then it goes, te lairas-tu, mourir. So it goes, E carabi, titi carabi, toto carabo, o compere giri, teleratu, teleratu, teleratu muri. So listen for those words. Fête, Noël, rôti. Okay? Il était un petit homme qui s'appelait Guillari Carabi. Il voulait faire la fête pour le Noël chez lui Carabi. Titi Carabi, Toto Caro, au compère Guillari. Teleratu, teleratu, teleratu mourir. Guillari s'en va au marché, to the market, pour acheter un rôti Carabi. Mais sur la route, il tomba sur un groupe des amis Carabi, Titi Carabi, Toto Caro, au compérieri. Teleratu, teleratu, teleratu muri. Oh my word. Okay. Okay, so his friends now invite him to take a couple pots pour se chauffer. We need to warm himself up. Ses copains l'invitaient pour brièvement se chauffer Carabi. Après 2 petits pots, Guéry a perdu le rôti Carabi. Titi Carabi, Toto Cabo, au compère Guéry. Teleratu, teleratu, teleratu muri. This is the most important part. This is the moral of the story. La morale de cette conte. The moral of this story. Si la fête en fit, if you're making a feast, il faut le bon moment. You need the best moment avant de se réjouir, before you enjoy yourself. La morale de cette conte, si la fête en fit, Carabi. Il faut le bon moment pour on se laisse réjouir Carabi, Titi Carabi, Toto Cabo, au compère Guéry. Teleratu, teleratu, teleratu muri. Thanks guys, that was great. So there are all sorts of ways for preparing for Christmas, like where we are right now. And people have prepared for Christmas ever since Christmas came about. So way back 100 years ago in America, when people lived on the frontier and they lived in log houses and they had to plow their fields with their cattle and they had all this work to do all the time and life was really hard on the frontier in America before they even had electricity or toilets, they still took time out of their very busy, hard lives to celebrate the season in comfort and in joy.
Christmas was coming. The little log house was almost buried in snow. Great drifts were banked against the walls and windows, and in the morning when Pa opened the door, there was a wall of snow as high as Laura's head. Pa took the shovel and shoveled it away, and then he shoveled a path to the barn, where the horses and the cows were snug and warm in their stalls. Ma was busy all day long cooking good things for Christmas. She baked salt rising bread and rye and Injun bread, and Swedish crackers, and a huge pan of baked beans with salt pork and molasses. She baked vinegar pies and dried apple pies and filled a big jar with cookies, and she let Laura and Mary lick the cake spoon. All this was done because Aunt Eliza and Uncle Peter and the cousins were coming to spend Christmas. The day before Christmas they came. Laura and Mary heard the gay ringing of sleigh bells growing louder every moment, and then the big bobsled came out of the woods and drove up to the gate. Aunt Eliza and Uncle Peter and the cousins were in it, all covered up, under blankets and robes and buffalo skins. They were wrapped up in so many coats and mufflers and veils and shawls that they looked like big shapeless bundles. When they all came in, the little house was full and running over. Black Susan the cat ran out and hid in the barn, but Jack leaped in circles through the window, through the snow, barking as though he would never stop. Now there were cousins to play with. Laura had never had so much fun. All morning she played outdoors in the snow with Alice and Mary and Ella and Peter. The next morning, they all woke up almost at the same moment. they looked at their stockings, and something was in them. They all ran shouting to see what Santa Claus had brought. In each stocking, there was a pair of bright red mittens, and there was a long, flat stick of red and white striped peppermint candy, all beautifully notched along each side. They were all so happy they could hardly speak at first. They just looked with shining eyes at those lovely Christmas presents. But Laura was the happiest of all. Laura had a rag doll. Then there was the Christmas dinner. The children did not say a word at table, for they knew that they should be seen and not heard. But they did not need to ask for second helpings. Ma and Aunt Eliza kept their plates full and let them eat all the good things they could hold. Christmas comes but once a year, said Aunt Eliza. Dinner was early, because Aunt Eliza, Uncle Peter, and the cousins had such a long way to go. Best the horses can do, Uncle Peter said. We'll hardly make it home before dark. So as soon as they had eaten dinner, Uncle Peter and Pa went to put the horses to the sled, while Ma and Aunt Eliza wrapped up the cousins. They pulled heavy woolen stockings over the woolen stockings and the shoes that they were already wearing. They put on all the mittens and coats and hoods and shawls and wrapped mufflers around their necks. So they all got into the big bobsled, cozy and warm, and Pa tucked the last robe well in around them. "Goodbye, goodbye," they called, and off they went, the horses trotting gaily and the sleigh bells ringing. In just a little while, the merry sound of the bells was gone, and Christmas was over. But what a happy Christmas it had been.
Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing, and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. Joy to the earth, the Savior brings. Let men their songs employ. While fields and floods, rocks, hills and plains repeat the sounding joy, the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love.
Another American singing tradition that you might be familiar with is called a spiritual. And a spiritual, do you guys know what a spiritual is? A song called a spiritual? No. Okay, well a spiritual is from the time when there were slaves in America. And slaves, you guys know what slaves are?
Yes.
Okay, what's a slave?
It's a person that works.
That's right. It's a person that works all the time and they're not allowed to stop. And they're hurt if they stop. And so we wouldn't like that, would we, to be slaves? And the slaves would sing about God, and they'd sing about freedom, that they wouldn't want to be slaves. And out of their suffering, they brought out a beautiful, deep music that we call spirituals. And this is a spiritual about Christmas. It goes, go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. The shepherds kept their watching o'er silent flocks by night. Behold, throughout the heavens there shone a God's people said,
Amen.
"Hilly ho!" cried old Fezziwig, skipping down from the high desk with wonderful agility. "Clear away, my lads, and let's have lots of room here. Hilly ho, Dick! Cheer up, Ebenezer! Clear away! Clear away!" There was nothing they wouldn't have cleared away, or couldn't have cleared away, with old Fezziwig looking on. It was done in a minute. Every movable was packed off as if it were dismissed from public life for evermore. The floor was swept and watered, the lamps were trimmed, fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse was as snug and warm and dry and bright a ballroom as you would desire ever to see upon a Christmas night. In came a fiddler with a music book and went up the lofty desk and made an orchestra of it and tuned like 50 stomach aches. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast substantial smile. In came the 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In they all came, one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly, some pushing, some pulling. In they all came, anyhow and everyhow. And away they all went, 20 couple at once, hands half round and back again the other way, down the middle and up again, round and round in various stages of affectionate groping. Old Fezziwig, clapping his hands to stop the dance, cried out, "Well done!" And the fiddler plunged his hot face into a pot of porter. There were more dances, and there were forfeits, and more dances, and there was cake, and there was wine, and there was a great piece of cold roast, and a great piece of cold boiled, and there were mince pies, and plenty of beer. Then old Fezziwig stood out to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig. As to her, she was worthy to be his partner in every sense of the term, and if that's not high praise, you tell me higher, and I'll use it. A positive light appeared to issue from Fezziwig's calves. They shone in every part of the dance like a moon. But when the clock had struck 11, this domestic ball broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations, one on either side of the door, and shaking hands with every person individually as he or she went out, wished him or her a Merry Christmas. When everybody had retired but the 2 apprentices, they did the same to them, and thus the cheerful voices died away, and the lads went off to their beds. Good Christian men, rejoice with heart and soul and voice.
Now give heed to what we say. Jesus Christ is born today. Ox and ass before him bow, and he is in the manger now. Christ is born today. Christ is born today. Good Christian men, rejoice with heart and soul and voice. Now we hear of endless bliss. Jesus Christ was born for this. He hath opened the heavenly door, and man is blessed forevermore. Christ was born for this. Christ was born for this. Good Christian men, rejoice with heart and soul and voice. Now ye need not fear the grave. Jesus Christ was born to save. Calls you one and calls you all to gain his everlasting hall. Christ was born to save. Christ was born to save.
Another American song tradition is called the Kentucky Carol. Where do you think the Kentucky Carol comes from?
Alabama.
Yeah? You think the Kentucky Carol comes from Alabama?
I think it comes from Turkey.
Well, you're both wrong. The Kentucky Carol comes from Turkey. I mean, it comes from Kentucky. And it was brought over the wide sea by Scotch-Irish settlers, and it was grown up in the Appalachian Mountains, and it's a simple melody that is usually sung in a call and response with a repetitive refrain. So here's an example for you. Christ was born in Bethlehem,
Christ was born in Bethlehem. Christ was born in Bethlehem, and in a manger lay. And in a manger lay, and in a manger lay. Christ was born in Bethlehem, and in a manger lay. Wise men traveled seeking him. Wise men traveled seeking him. Wise men traveled seeking him, and journeyed with a star. Shepherds left their flocks by night. Shepherds left their flocks by night. Shepherds left their flocks by night to gaze upon their King. To gaze upon their King, to gaze upon their King. Shepherds left their flocks by night to gaze upon their King. He came and dwelt among us. He came and dwelt among us. He came and dwelt among us, all full of grace and truth. All full of grace and truth. All full of grace and truth. He came and dwelt among us, all full of grace and truth.
We sang all of our carols once through to get the parts, and then we fell to talking about other Christmases. May was the oldest, and she could remember the farthest back. The tree, doesn't it shine this year? I think it's about the prettiest one I've ever seen. The first one, though, that was mighty good to see too. The first one, you mean you can remember the first Christmas tree? Around here, yes. When I was a very little girl, nobody in the country round really celebrated Christmases. Not what you'd call celebration, you know. It was more of a religious time then, and it fell on the 6th of January. Old Christmas, we call it now. And then we didn't make a great to-do. We gave one another presents even. Maybe it was because the folks around here were too poor to give fancy presents then. I don't know. Oh, the least ones hang up their little stockings, get an apple maybe, and some peppermints, and they were tickled to death with that. On old Christmas Eve, we'd sit for the fire, and Mom and Dad and Granny tell us about the baby Jesus born in the stable on this night. And they'd say that if we'd go out at midnight, we'd see the old elderberry bush blooming in the fence corner right in the snow. And that if we peeped in through a chink in our stable and made no racket at all, we'd see the cow and the old mule kneeling down, praying before the little King of Kings. Then maybe Granny'd sing us her Christmas carol, Righteous and True, in the old mountain tune. And we'd all sing some together. All of us would try to stay up until midnight so we could go to the elderberry blossom, go see the elderberry blossom and the brutes kneeling down. But we were all used to going to bed at the edge of dark, and we could never keep awake that long. That used to be our Christmas. It was a good, peaceful kind of time.
Hail the blessed morn when the great mediator down from the regions of glory descends. Shepherds go worship the babe in the manger. Lo, for a guard the bright angels attend. His favors to cure. Richer by far is the heart's adoration. Dearer to God are the prayers of the poor. Brightest and best of the sons of the morning, dawn on our darkness and lend us thy name. Star of the east, the horizon adorning, guide where our infant Redeemer is laid.
So those are the Christmas carols we're singing from America. We're from the Appalachian Mountains, where they celebrated Christmas, like you heard. But now we leave these United States, and we fly across the ocean. And what lies across the ocean but the most beautiful, wonderful country in the world, which we all know to be called France. And this beautiful, wonderful country called France has a tradition of beautiful, wonderful Christmas songs. France was actually called the eldest daughter of the church because French tradition has that Mary Magdalene actually preached the gospel in France. And so they've been singing about this for a long time. And this next one is called He is Born the Holy Child.
He is born the Holy Child, play the oboe and bagpipes merrily. He is born the Holy Child, sing we all of the Savior mild. Through long ages of the past, prophets have foretold His coming. Through long ages of the past, now the time has come at last.
En français.
Il est né le divin enfant, jouez au bois et son des musettes. Il est né le divin enfant, chantons tous en avènement. Ah, qu'il est beau, qu'il est charmant, que ses grâces sont parfaites. Ah, qu'il est beau, qu'il est charmant, qu'il est douce, divin enfant.
In English.
He is born the Holy Child, say the oboe and bagpipes merrily. He is born the Holy Child, sing we all of the Savior mild.
And this next one I think you all know too. It's called Des Anges dans nos campagnes.
Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria
where so many of our Christmas traditions come from, have known Christ for a long time. And over 2,000 years, they've had to endure a lot of suffering. And what makes that tradition so rich and deep is that the Nativity, the birth of God on earth, shoots all of it through with joy. Through their sorrows, through our sufferings, because of Jesus Christ's birth and his sufferings for us. Our sorrows are transfigured, and we get to go to heaven to be with him.
Father had saved one story for Christmas Eve and told it while the candles were burning on the tree. The faint sound of village church bells coming across the plains made his story of another Christmas Eve sound like a song of hope. Hope that maybe kindness and love of peace would be strong enough to stop the war soon. For the first time, he spoke of things like offensive, march, trenches, shell fire. But the dark picture his words created was only a backdrop against which his story of human souls shone all the brighter. Last Christmas Eve, he began, we had received orders to be prepared for a surprise attack against the Russians. Our trenches had been under heavy fire for days. We had either to retreat or to advance, and those who planned the moves of war decided on an advance. We had been waiting for hours, crouching against the walls of our trenches when the word came, go. We crept out into the snow, countless silent dark shapes against the whiteness, and ran to the sunken road which lay between our lines and the mountainside where the Russians were. Shells screamed overhead and burst behind us, drowning out all noise we might have made. And when we reached the road, whispered orders from the captain scurried down the line like mice. Advance along the road. Don't dare make a sound or strike a light. We tramped the knee-deep snow, skirting the friendly hillside that sheltered us from the fire, stealing towards the Russians. And then, just ahead of me, I saw a boy kneel in the snow beside a wayside crucifix and light a candle. It flickered in the still air, casting a feeble light on the image of Christ above it. "Oh Lord," the man next to me sighed, reaching into his knapsack for a candle. Others had seen the glowing light, and as I looked around, I saw that more and more candles were being lighted all around. A whisper spread, like the order from the captain, except this was not an order from the captain. "Light a candle for Christmas Eve," men whispered. And their very words seemed to turn into tiny stars, as dozens and dozens, then hundreds of candles came forth from the knapsacks to be lighted and stuck in the snow. The hillside was now one glow of light, and the crucifix was bright with an unearthly brightness. We were a target for the Russian guns, but we never gave it a thought. For a little while we were lost in prayer, until one of the men cried, "They have stopped firing. Look!" Across the valley, on the hillside where the Russians were entrenched, a few small flames began to tremble, then more and more. Candles, hundreds of them, thousands, one for every gun that was now silent. Around me men began to sing, "Silent night, holy night," and from across the valley the song came back to us 1,000-fold. Behind the lines so facing each other, the guns had ceased to roar, and no more shells were screaming between men and the stars. Perhaps the Christ child had walked between the lines, and while he walked, peace had stayed between us.
Straf in himmlische
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for sharing in Christmas with us. That's what we're all here to do. That's what he came to do with us. So we all look forward to the time where very soon we can say, Christ is born. And
For us, that will be Sunday night.
yeah,
Services will be 8 till about midnight, 1 o'clock.
come and pray with us. And we have some refreshments now for those of you that are interested. Thank you so much for joining us. It was very nice to have you.
Thank you.